Welcome to this video about conducting the annual meeting. I'd like to share some thoughts based on 40 years of conducting them. Now, these are my personal reflections and should not take the place of you reading, marking, learning, and inwardly digesting the canons and the customary. So, when should you do your annual meeting? Canon 26 is very specific. It says the annual meeting is held in January. Now, it doesn't specify a day. It's just held in January. You could pick a Monday, I guess. I would suggest later in January, since that would allow you to recover from Christmas and accomplish some other facts. Always look at the NFL schedule and try to avoid a playoff game. Otherwise, you might have a problem with a quorum. I speak from experience. Years ago, I misread the date for the Super Bowl. It was played in January then, now in February because of more teams, but that's another topic. Anyway, I scheduled the annual meeting to start about 6 p.m., halftime of the Super Bowl. Can we say low attendance? And it turns out that that was one of the most exciting Super Bowl games in a number of years. Of course, if you have a controversial or contentious issue that needs to be addressed, you might be able to stack the odds by calling some people. Many parishes will set the time for a Sunday morning, following the service or between services. This will allow you to reach easily most of your parish. If you run multiple services, the meetings may not fit into that time frame. Now, you can combine services, but you'll lose some of the attendees because of the loss of their service, and visitors never get the word. For many years, I offered the financial reports between the two main services at St. Peter and St. Paul, and then did the elections and other reports in the evening. The advantage here is that the amount of time you can devote to both sets of reports. Evening meetings have the advantage of more time, but lack the full convenience of attendance. The positive to the evening meeting is that only the really committed will choose to come back and cast votes. Now, why have an annual meeting? The purpose of the annual meeting is twofold. Again, Canon 26 sets out the minimum expectations of reports, and Canon 25 requires the vestry elections to be held. The reports are the report of the rector or vicar for the previous year. It shall include the number of persons baptized and confirmed, the number of baptized members, confirmed communicants in good standing, and households, specifying the number of removals and additions, the number of marriages and burials, and the number of services conducted, and the total attendance and communions. It also is supposed to include the number of teachers and students in the Sunday school church, and the total amount of the discretionary fund received with such statements of expenditure as he may deem proper. I personally would break that down into how much was given, how much was spent on charity, and the definition of charity was how much was given away, the amount spent on ministry. That amount was spent on random clergy expenses such as dues, meals at conferences, books, etc. And finally, Category 3, support of the parish. Small items not budgeted for, like a computer monitor for a secretary. It also includes the report of the senior warden, which doubles as the reports of the junior warden and treasurer. The canons specify that that shall include what money, lands, or other property has been received during the preceding year, and from what source and the value of the same. It also will include all offerings, separately stating the purposes for which they have been made, and all expenditures and the purposes for which they have been expended. And it includes what property has been purchased, exchanged, mortgaged, sold, or otherwise alienated or encumbered, and for what purpose that was done. And finally, it includes what debts have been contracted and what debts previously have been contracted that are owing, in addition to what improvements have been made and with the cost. So, that's the report section. Second reason is Canon 25 requires the election of vestry. I would suggest personally that those nominations should be made in November. This allows for a number of things to happen in preparation for the meeting. First, it allows you to make sure that the nominees are qualified. Canon 25 says that vestry candidates shall be confirmed communicants in good standing, of at least 18 years of age, and they have to be canonically resident in the parish, and they have to have been financial contributors to the parish in the preceding year as shown on the records of the treasurer. That's why I suggest you start early. Personally, there were a number of times that I would have to go to a nominee and explain, although they had been nominated, they were not technically eligible because they weren't a member, or because they weren't confirmed, or because they hadn't transferred into the parish. Now, that would normally result in a new official member. In some instances, the person had not made a pledge or fulfilled it. That would allow a new conversation about pledging, and often a commitment would be made for the coming year. And I would always say that it was important for a member of the vestry to be financially committed to the church since they were in charge of the finances. In the case where they had to withdraw if there were questions, then I could simply say that we had spoken personally and they couldn't make the commitment for this year. Now, there's an outline of the basic considerations for a vestry member that's laid out in the customary on page 17. And honestly, you should live with the customary and the canons. A final note. The definition of a communicant in good standing is used several times. Canon 28, section 4, and the customary, page 9, gives this definition. A communicant in good standing is a baptized person who has been confirmed or received by a bishop of this church and who receives Holy Communion on a regular basis as a communicant of this church. All communicants whose names are duly recorded in the parish register where they are attending and who for the previous year have been faithful in corporate worship, unless for good cause prevented, and have been faithful in working, praying, and giving for the spread of the gospel and the kingdom of God, are to be considered communicants in good standing. Now, my favorite was the old definition of a communicant in good standing was an individual who was 18 years old who had attended and received communion 3 times a year. Now, that would certainly broaden our pool of candidates, but I'm not sure of suitable candidates. The customary says that information should be published for each nominee at the annual parish meeting or before that, so that a more intelligent selection can be made by the voting members. That's the reason to do your nominations in November. The vestry election is one of the most important tasks of the parish meeting, and I would suggest that a brief biography be compiled on each nominee. Sometimes an issue of the qualification of voters will come up. This also is covered by Canon 25. The members of the vestry shall be elected at the annual parish meeting by a majority of the qualified voters present and voting. And Canon 26 also says, qualified voters at parish meetings shall be confirmed communicants in good standing. Remember the customary page 9. And they should be at least 16 years of age or older. The presence of at least 10% of the qualified voters of the parish or mission shall constitute a quorum. Now, I've never faced this issue, but I'm aware of situations in which a contentious subject was at stake in an annual meeting. Voters were challenged, and recourse had to be made to the register to provide communicant status or reference to the treasurer to prove support. The rector would then simply say eligible or ineligible after each challenge. And a number of us are familiar with a parish that required an oath of conformity to the church as a condition of being a nominee or casting a vote. This is not canonical and should never, ever be allowed. Let me add a few comments as we close. Again, from the customary. The annual meeting can also become a major occasion in the parish year for rallying morale, analyzing the progress of the past 12 months, and concentrating on your goals for the immediate future. I would suggest some form of meal, a potluck supper in the evening, or breakfast in the morning. One of the ministry groups could be in charge and therefore be highlighted as they offered their service to the parish. The annual meeting can be a great time to start looking ahead with plans and hopes and excitement. Each group should submit a written report about the events of the past year, but they should also offer a very brief oral statement about plans for the future and an invitation for each member to become part of its own ministry. The oral report could recognize and thank members of the group and offer a chance for the congregation to show their appreciation to each other. My required report, the rector's report, was always written. People could take it home and read it as they wished because it was really boring. In my opinion, though, the annual meeting is the opportunity to offer oral comments. That was the core of the time. The oral presentations would allow me to highlight important milestones in the past, to recognize important individuals, and to lay out goals in the future. And that would result in a focus on the future and to generate excitement and anticipation. And this time allowed me to reveal some of my own personal, my hopes, my fears, my commitment to both God and to the members of the congregation, and to let them know that together we walked with each other, hand in hand. The annual meeting should be a time of fellowship, of evaluation, and of anticipation and excitement. But most of all, it should be a time of giving thanks to God for His many blessings in the past year and to ask for His guidance in the coming days. That is, for me, what would make a successful parish annual meeting.